November 18th, 1940. 4:47 in the morning. Edwin Clarke crouched behind a stone wall, watching German boots move through fog 40 yards ahead. His hands gripped a dented soup can. The metal was cold. His father had taught him how to pack it 3 days ago, before the Luftwaffe transport went down off the coast. The boy was 16, too young for the army, too stubborn to stay harmless. Behind him, the Dorset village slept under blackout curtains. Ahead, 20 German soldiers advanced through the hedgerows, believing they had landed in occupied France after their plane crashed. They believed wrong. Edwin's Home Guard commander had called the soup cans tin toys during 5 weeks of drilling. The regular soldiers nicknamed them Edwin's Soup Kitchen. The military dismissed improvised grenades as desperate theatre. No one believed kitchen scrap could stop trained infantry. The Germans were 30 yards away now. Edwin could hear their radio operator whispering coordinates in German. They thought this was abandoned farmland, easy crossing to regroup with their forces. The lead soldier passed the trigger point. The second man stepped on it. Before we see what happened next, drop a comment telling us where you're watching from and whether you think soup cans could actually stop trained German infantry. It helps the algorithm share stories like Edwin's to more history lovers like you. The blast tore through the formation at 4:51. The sound rolled across the fields like close thunder. The second German fell backward, his rifle spinning into the fog. The soldiers behind him scattered left and right into the hedgerows, where Edwin and 23 Home Guard volunteers had spent 5 days placing traps. The night became a sequence of flashes and echoes. 7 explosions in 40 seconds. By the time the fog thickened again, 17 German soldiers were dead on the road. 1 British volunteer had taken a stray round through the neck and bled out before the medic reached him. The surviving Germans vanished into the fields, leaving equipment scattered across the approach. Edwin's commander found him at dawn, still crouched behind the wall, watching the road through the thinning fog. The old man looked at the bodies, looked at the dented soup cans lying in the mud, looked at Edwin. "You actually did it," he said. Edwin said nothing. His father was back at the cannery, filling more tins. They would need them. The Germans had survivors. Survivors talked. The command in Dorchester assumed that was the end of it. It was not. The second German landing came the next night under heavy fog. This time they did not advance cautiously. 60 men swept through the village in coordinated teams, kicking in doors, dragging villagers into the street, demanding answers. Where did the traps come from? Who made them? How many were there? Edwin watched from inside his father's cannery rafters as German boots crushed empty tins on the concrete floor below. 3 officers argued in sharp German about sabotage, about defensive preparations, about whether this was organized resistance or random luck. One officer held up a dented soup can recovered from the road. He turned it over in his hands, reading the faded label. He laughed, said something that made the others laugh too. Edwin did not laugh. He understood. They thought this was desperation, civilian panic, kitchen weapons thrown together by farmers who had no idea what real combat looked like. They were searching for a cache, for supplies, for evidence of military coordination. They would not find any. The Home Guard had 14 men left, and maybe 200 rifle rounds total. No grenades, no mortars, no anti-tank weapons, no reinforcements. Just soup cans packed with scrap metal and industrial explosive compound, taken from the cannery stockroom. Edwin watched the Germans leave at dawn, still laughing, convinced the trapline was exhausted. That belief would kill them. November 19th, 11:23 at night. The third German assault came with 40 men in tight formation, advancing down the coast road with bayonets extended, probing every shadow, every ditch, every suspicious shape in the darkness. They had learned. They were cautious now. Professional. That caution destroyed their tactical spacing. Edwin waited behind the same stone wall, 80 yards back from the road. His father knelt beside him, watching through the darkness. Neither spoke. The Home Guard positions were spread thin along 2 miles of coastline. 9 men covered the northern approach. 5 held the southern hedgerows. Edwin and his father held the center. The Germans reached the kill zone at 11:26. Edwin triggered the manual detonation. The first blast erupted beneath the lead squad's feet. The shockwave threw 3 men backward into the soldiers behind them. Before the echo faded, the second blast tore through the middle of the column, then the third, then the fourth. The chain reaction rolled down the entire formation like dominoes falling. 32 German soldiers went down before they found cover. The survivors scrambled into the ditches and returned fire blindly into the darkness, hitting nothing but stone walls and empty fields. The Home Guard fired from concealed positions during the retreat, dropping 2 more before the Germans vanished into the tree line. By dawn, the road was silent again. Edwin's commander found him resetting traps along the hedgerow, his hands black with powder residue and dirt. The old man did not smile this time. He looked exhausted. "They're evacuating the village," he said. "Women and children first. We have maybe 1 more night before command pulls us back to Dorchester." "How many men do we have left?" Edwin asked. 14. "Counting you." Edwin looked at the road, at the equipment scattered in the ditches, at the scorch marks on the stone walls. "They'll come again tonight," he said. His commander nodded, said nothing. Edwin kept working. His father helped him lift a heavy tin into position beneath a drainage culvert. The old man's hands were steady. He had packed explosives for 40 years at the cannery. He understood pressure, timing, force distribution. "They're learning our patterns," his father said quietly. "I know. Next time they'll bring fire." Edwin looked at him. His father's face was grey in the early light, exhausted, scared, but his hands never shook. "Then we adapt," Edwin said. November 20th. 8:15 at night, the Germans brought fire. They advanced behind a wall of flame, setting the coastal fields ablaze, using the smoke to blind the Home Guard positions and reveal the trap lines. The wind pushed the fire toward the village, forcing defenders back, exposing the defensive network. Edwin's father ran forward to drag a wounded volunteer out of the flames. He made it 10 yards before a rifle round caught him in the chest. He fell forward into the smoke. Edwin saw it happen from 80 yards away, saw his father stumble, saw him fall, saw the smoke swallow him. He ran. The Home Guard commander screamed at him to stay in position. Edwin did not hear him. He reached his father 30 seconds later, pulled him backward through the burning grass by his coat, dragged him to the river's edge. The old man was still breathing. Blood soaked through his shirt. His eyes were open but unfocused. "Edwin," he whispered, "don't talk. I'm getting you out. The traps, reset them. They think..." He coughed, blood on his lips. "They think we're finished." Edwin held him. The smoke was thick now, choking. The heat from the flames pressed against his back. His father's breathing grew shallow, then stopped. Edwin carried the body to the river and laid it in the shallows, where the current would keep it cool. He did not cry, did not speak. He looked at his hands. Ash and blood. He washed them in the river until the water ran clear. Then he walked back toward the flames. If you're wondering how a 16-year-old kept fighting after losing his father, subscribe to www.2wepon's Vault so you don't miss the moment Edwin turned grief into Germany's worst nightmare. The German commander was about to make a fatal assumption, and you need to see what happened next. By dawn on November 21st, Edwin had reset every trap along the defensive line. He worked alone in the darkness, crawling through smoke and ash, placing tins by feel, connecting triggers to pressure plates salvaged from burned-out positions. His hands were blistered, his lungs burned from smoke inhalation. The German commander believed the trap supply was exhausted, believed the fire had destroyed the defensive network, believed the boy who had been causing so much trouble was dead or broken. That assumption became a death sentence. At sunrise, the Germans attempted a 3-pronged flanking maneuver through the river reeds, trying to encircle the remaining Home Guard positions from the north and south simultaneously, while a center force pinned them down with suppressing fire. Edwin triggered the chain detonation at 6:03 in the morning. Every trap along the northern approach detonated within 5 seconds. Then the southern line. Then the reserve positions hidden in the reeds themselves. 40 German soldiers went down in the coordinated blast sequence. The survivors retreated in chaos, firing at shadows, at sounds, at ghosts. They had stopped trusting the ground, stopped trusting the silence. Every tin can in every ditch became a potential grave. By noon, the Germans were shooting at their own shadows. The Home Guard was down to 9 operational defenders. Edwin was the only one still moving without assistance. The others were wounded, exhausted, out of ammunition, out of hope. Then the weather broke. Clear skies, no fog, no smoke, no shadows to hide in. The Germans brought their armoured support forward. November 21st, 2:34 in the afternoon. The armoured truck crossed into the village perimeter with an MG-34 machine gun mounted on the roof. 50-round drum. Rate of fire, 900 rounds per minute. Behind it, 60 German troops advanced in tight formation, using the vehicle as a mobile shield. The Home Guard line collapsed under the first machine gun burst. 9 defenders scattered into the village ruins. 3 went down in the initial sweep. The others retreated toward the church, toward the docks, toward anywhere that offered stone walls thick enough to stop bullets. Edwin ran in the opposite direction. He moved toward the riverbank, toward the ford crossing where the first traps had been laid 5 days ago. He carried 1 soup can in his coat, the last one. His hands were burned. His lungs felt like broken glass. He could barely see through the smoke still drifting from yesterday's fires. The armored truck turned toward the river. The German commander stood in the passenger seat, directing the advance through hand signals. He believed Edwin was dead, believed the trap network was destroyed, believed brute force would finally end what 5 days of careful tactics had failed to finish. Edwin reached the riverbank and dropped into the cold water. The current pulled at his legs. The water was murky from ash and debris. He moved beneath the overhanging reeds, submerged to his neck, breathing through a hollow reed stem he had cut that morning for exactly this purpose. The armored truck reached the ford at 2:41. Edwin could hear the engine grinding, the metal treads crushing stones, the commander shouting orders in German. The machine gun swept the tree line methodically. 50 rounds tore through branches overhead, then another 50. The gunner was thorough. German infantry spread along both riverbanks, probing the reeds with bayonets, searching for survivors, for traps, for the boy who had killed 112 of their soldiers with kitchen scrap. Edwin waited in the water. The cold was pulling heat from his body. His fingers were numb. The reed stem kept slipping from his lips. He forced himself to breathe slowly. Shallow breaths, no ripples, no sound. The armored truck entered the ford. Water churned around the wheels as it advanced toward the crossing point. The driver shifted gears. The engine revved. The vehicle rocked slightly on the uneven riverbed. Edwin surfaced. He had 4 seconds before the machine gunner spotted him. He used 3. The throw was 47 yards through open air. The soup can arced over the water, tumbling end over end, trailing smoke from the lit fuse. It landed directly beneath the front axle, just as the truck reached the deepest point of the ford. The blast overturned the vehicle sideways into the water. The sudden stop transformed the truck into a dam. The following troops behind it piled into one another, bunching up exactly where the remaining Home Guard defenders had clear sight lines from the village ruins. Rifle fire erupted from 3 positions simultaneously. The German formation disintegrated. Soldiers scrambled for cover that did not exist. Some tried to climb over the overturned truck. Others retreated back across the ford. The machine gunner was trapped beneath the vehicle, screaming, drowning in 2 feet of water. Edwin dove beneath the surface as rifle rounds tore through the reeds around him. He let the current pull him downstream, tumbling over rocks, gasping when his head broke the surface, diving again when bullets snapped past his ears. The water was so cold it felt like knives. His coat dragged him down. He shed it and kept swimming. 200 yards downstream, he dragged himself onto the muddy bank and collapsed. The battle ended at 3:47. British reinforcements from Dorchester arrived 1 hour later, led by an actual army captain with actual soldiers carrying actual military equipment. They found the shoreline silent, burned, littered with German weapons, ammunition, and bodies. The captain walked the defensive line with Edwin's Home Guard commander, counting impacts, measuring blast patterns, examining the improvised trap mechanisms still visible in the mud. "How many men did you have?" the captain asked. 23 at the start, 9 by the end. Against how many? Approximately 140 German infantry across 5 days, plus whatever crew survived the transport crash. The captain stopped walking, looked at the bodies scattered between the river and the road, looked at the overturned armoured truck still blocking the ford, looked at the dented soup cans lying in the ditches. "Jammed tin grenades," he said quietly. "We've been circulating the designs through Home Guard units since Dunkirk. Didn't think anyone would actually. Who made them work?" Boy named Edwin Clarke. 16. Worked his father's cannery. Where is he now? Field hospital. Hypothermia. Shrapnel wounds. Burns. He pulled himself out of the river an hour ago and collapsed. Medics said he'll live. The captain was quiet for a long moment. Then he picked up one of the soup cans from the mud, turned it over. "Read the faded label. 112 confirmed enemy casualties," he said. 14 British losses. 5 days. Soup cans. "Yes, sir. This doesn't go in any report." "Sir?" If word gets out that coastal villages can hold off German forces with improvised weapons, it creates panic. Implies we're not prepared. Implies regular forces aren't sufficient. The incident gets written off as enemy lost at sea. Your men get commended for reconnaissance work. Nothing about combat, nothing about the boy. The Home Guard commander said nothing. The captain dropped the soup can back into the mud. Get your men processed through medical. I'll handle the paperwork. The German bodies get buried offshore. Their unit was lost in bad weather. That's the official story. And the boy? He gets a handshake and a train ticket home. That's all anyone gets for saving England with kitchen scrap. Edwin woke 36 hours later, in a field hospital bed that smelled like disinfectant and blood. His hands were wrapped in bandages. His chest ached where shrapnel had torn through his shirt. A nurse told him he had been unconscious since they pulled him from the riverbank, told him he was lucky, told him 8 Home Guard volunteers had survived, and every one of them had mentioned his name. He asked one question, "Did anyone else make it?" The nurse understood what he meant. She shook her head. Edwin closed his eyes, said nothing more. 3 days later, a British officer visited his bed and told him the German unit had been declared lost at sea. Told him there would be no medal, no commendation, no official recognition. Told him the soup can grenades had been replaced by standardized military designs 2 weeks ago. Told him to go home. Edwin left the hospital in December with burned hands and a train ticket to London. The village was mostly evacuated. The cannery was rubble. His father's body had been buried in a mass grave with the other Home Guard casualties under a plain wooden marker that listed no names. This actually happened in 1940, but you'd never find it in textbooks. That's why WW2 Wee Pond's Vault exists to rescue stories like Edwin's from silence. Subscribe now if you believe forgotten heroes deserve to be remembered, because what happened next shows how England buried the truth for 34 years. The Home Guard commander submitted a classified report in January 1941. It documented the improvised defensive tactics, the casualty ratios, the 5-day engagement along the Dorset coast. It mentioned Edwin Clarke by name 3 times. It recommended formal recognition. The report was filed in a cabinet in Dorchester and forgotten. Edwin moved to London and lived with distant relatives who asked no questions about why a 16-year-old boy had burn scars on his hands and woke screaming twice a week. He found work in a warehouse, kept his head down, never mentioned Dorset, never mentioned soup cans, never mentioned the fog or the fire or his father drowning in 2 feet of water while screaming his name. The war continued without him. In 1947, a military historian interviewed Home Guard survivors for a research project on coastal defense tactics. He tracked down Edwin through service records, asked him to describe the improvised weapons program, asked how the jam-tin grenades were constructed, asked how many enemy casualties were confirmed. Edwin provided technical specifications, drew sketches, explained detonation mechanics and trigger systems, refused to discuss anything else. "Just write down how they worked," he said. "That's all that matters." The historian's report was classified until 1974. By then, Edwin was 50 years old, and no one cared about soup cans anymore. Edwin entered university in 1948 on a veteran's scholarship, studied civil engineering, specialized in structural integrity and load-bearing calculations, graduated in 1953 with honors, and took a position with a construction firm in Manchester. He designed bridges, warehouses, industrial facilities, buildings meant to last. His colleagues never knew about Dorset, never asked about the scars, never wondered why he refused to attend company events on November 18th, or why he always took 3 days off in December to visit a cemetery that held no family graves he would discuss. He married in 1956, had 3 children, lived in a quiet suburban house with a garden where he grew vegetables in neat rows. His children knew he had served in the Home Guard, knew he did not like talking about it, learned not to ask. In 1952, his technical sketches were published in an obscure military engineering journal under the title Improvised Defensive Mechanisms, Dorset Coast, November 1940. The article was 11 pages long. Edwin's name appeared in 3 paragraphs. No photographs, no interviews, just diagrams and specifications. The article became reference material for a military manual on field expedient weapons. That manual was used to train soldiers in improvisation tactics through the 1960s. Thousands of men learned from Edwin's designs without ever knowing his name. He never read the manual, never kept a copy of the article. When his wife found it in a library one afternoon and brought it home to show him, He looked at it for 30 seconds and handed it back. "That was a long time ago," he said. She never mentioned it again. Edwin Clarke died in 1998 at age 74 of natural causes. Heart failure. Quiet. Surrounded by family who held his scarred hands and told him they loved him. His obituary in the Manchester Guardian was 4 sentences long. Edwin Clarke, civil engineer, veteran of Home Guard service during World War II, died peacefully at home. He is survived by his wife Margaret, 3 children, and 7 grandchildren. No mention of Dorset, no mention of soup cans, no mention of 112 German soldiers or 5 days or fog or fire, or a father who bled out in the shallows teaching his son how to survive. The invisible history written in scrap metal and kitchen tins. There is a display case in the Imperial War Museum in London. Basement level. Section marked improvised defensive weapons, 1,940 to 1,941. Most visitors walk past it on their way to the tank exhibits upstairs. Inside the case sits a single soup can, dented, scorched black on one side. The label is mostly burned away, but you can still read part of it if you look closely. Tomato soup. Clarke Family Cannery, Dorset. The information card beside it reads, Jam tin grenade. Used in coastal defense operations, November 1940. Packed with scrap metal and industrial explosive. Effective range, approximately 40 yards. Defensive success rate, classified. No names mentioned. No details provided. No context about fog or fire, or a boy who held a coastline with kitchen scrap while his father bled out in the river. It looks like rusted kitchen waste. It killed 112 trained German troops across 5 days. It cost 14 British lives, including one man who spent 40 years packing explosives in soup cans and died teaching his son the same skill. It saved a village. It never made the newspapers. It was classified for 34 years and forgotten for 50 more. Most people walk past without stopping. Edwin Clarke never wanted fame. He wanted to survive. He wanted his village to survive. He held the Dorset coast for 5 nights with nothing but soup cans, and his father's knowledge and the kind of stubborn courage that does not make speeches or demand recognition. Most people walk past that soup can in the museum without stopping. But you didn't walk past this story. If Edwin's 5 nights holding the Dorset coast moved you the way it moved us, hit that like button. It tells YouTube to share forgotten stories like this to viewers who actually care about history beyond Hollywood versions. And if you haven't subscribed to WW2 Weapon's Vault yet, do it now. We're rescuing stories like Edwin's from the Silence Boys, who became heroes with improvised weapons and impossible courage. Turn on notifications so you never miss another story that deserves to be remembered. Drop a comment. Did someone in your family serve in the Home Guard? Or just tell us where you're watching from. Edwin's story has now reached your country, and knowing how far these stories travel keeps us going. Thank you for making sure Edwin Clarke doesn't disappear into silence. These men and women deserve to be remembered. You're helping make that happen. Back in 1940, a boy with soup cans held a coastline. Today, you made sure no one forgets.